Good afternoon and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to talk of Trump in the Indo-Pacific. And Trump has caused a lot of churning all over. And let's see what is the churning he's going to do in Indo-Pacific. And to talk us through all this and discuss more is General Raj Shukla. At the outset, let me welcome him. Raj, welcome back to Gunner Shot. Long time.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Great pleasure to be back on your show, sir. Looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Yeah. We need to have a lot of conversation about Trump because Trump has instigated a lot of conversation about on everywhere. Okay. Oh, well, be that as it may, I mean let's put it in context. Today, the Trumpomania, if I may call it, is fixed around Ukraine, his tariffs, getting hold of Panama Canal, Greenland, and Gaza, and Ukraine. I mean West Asia and Iran and Houthis. So far, ever since he's taken over as the president, he's not really focused on the Indo-Pacific. Uh, there are two ways of looking at it, and the two ways of people are interpreting it. The first way is, look, he's not interested in the Indo-Pacific, and he's got different ideas about the Indo-Pacific. The second way, which is being interpreted, is he wants to turn to Indo-Pacific. That's his main aim, but he's setting up the stage before he turns to Indo-Pacific and China. Because when he talked of Indo-Pacific, it's China. So there are two facets of this his action or inaction on Indo-Pacific so far. So how do you read it, and how do you think the whole thing is going to go forward, or how you visualize it? All yours. Please take it on.
So, sir, I mean, just like you and many others who are analyzing Trump, we all have our own analysis, none of which may be wholly right or wholly wrong, but for whatever it's worth. So, I think Trump today has three fixations. Let's call them Taiwan, Tehran, and tariffs, the three T's. So I will just do a comment on each of these, Taiwan, Tehran, and tariffs, from the Trump viewpoint. This is not I don't have a comment this way or that. I'm just looking at this from how Trump sees it.
Okay.
So my understanding is that as we discover Trump, I think he is more intelligent than what he appears to be. I think his one problem is that he doesn't prepare his speeches. So there is deep thought, but wo jo aake bolta hai, it appears to be unthought through. Like when he say, "I'll cleanse Gaza," लगता है this is an American who doesn't understand what's happening on ground. But as I have said somewhere else, that if you see that the MAGA camp has been working on Gaza for 7 to 8 years. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, presented a whole paper in the Cairo University about a year and a half back, where they have detailed this business of cleansing Gaza. Now, you may not agree with it, but there is a detailed economic package, technological package, a strategic package कि भाई Egypt को क्या देना है, Jordan को क्या देना है, business कैसे आएगा. So that's the first point I wish to make, that he is more intelligent than what he appears to be. I agree with you totally. In my view, they have very shrewdly seen that the real threat is China. And so they are saying that we must wind down from the other places and go to Indo-Pacific. In fact, if you see, you just mentioned offline Elbridge Colby. Elbridge Colby was the leader of the pack जिसने कहा सब कुछ बंद करो and turn to the Indo-Pacific. But उसके जो confirmation hearing थी, उसका जो एक, I think he's a rival, the chairman of the Defense Committee, Senator Cotton, उसने उसको फंसाया. He said, Elbridge, you tell me, is Iran an existential threat or no? पहले Colby used to say that, no, it's not an existential threat. We need to come to Indo-Pacific. But now that he was appearing for this interview, he had to sound a little more logical, because much of the MAGA camps thinks that nuclear Iran is an existential threat. Because with nuclear weapons and have the missiles to reach USA or even the bases in the region, तो वो एग्जिस्टेंशियल थ्रेट. तो आज की हालत में सर, they have made up their mind to wind down the other wars and go to the Indo-Pacific. But there are, of course, challenges. As we see now, Putin is backtracking. Zelensky has linked the mineral agreement to joining NATO. So it's not so easy to wind down the wars. But Trump, if you notice, sir, this very voluble Trump, whenever he's asked a question on China, he's rather emollient. He'll begin by saying, Xi is a good friend, and we will pull it off. On Taiwan, he has said specifically that I will not discuss this publicly. This is the only place where Trump exercises restraint, or he's prepared to answer any question on earth. Taiwan, he says, I will not answer it publicly. I've heard it with my own ears 2 to 3 times. So what is the game behind this? And now you see what's happening on ground on Taiwan. The Chinese, apart from the political pressures, they are raising issues of, identity assaults. वो कहते हैं आप Taiwanese हो ही नहीं, your hands. The United Works Department is in full flow. Abhi last week, a spying scandal was discovered in President Lai's office. Then all that other business of pressure tactics, political, informational, is on Taiwan. What should really worry us for the last 1 month, Admiral Paparo, CNC IPACOM, has been screaming, but the world is not listening because वो tariff में खोए हुए हैं. He's saying that they are no longer, the Chinese military maneuvers are no longer exercises. They are rehearsals for attack. They are concealing an attack. Now, what more does a military commander say? And he has given details of air violations, how the Coast Guard patrols are up by about 25%, maritime militia by 35%, cable kaatne lage hain, information quarantine, cyber attacks and all that. So, ground pe wo ho raha hai. Amidst all this, we had Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, last week in Philippines and Japan, where for the first time he said that we will re-establish deterrence in the Indo-Pacific and across the Taiwan Strait. Re-establish deterrence. In recent times, this is the first time I've heard some defense secretary say that. And we've seen now those Vipers, F-16 Vipers, the sale which had been paused for a while has recommenced. The first F-16 Viper has been delivered. There are these coastal anti-ship missiles to Philippines. When he went to Japan, he announced the formation of a joint force headquarters for Japan. So, to the Chinese, this is the American military response. Beach में Elbridge Colby in his congressional hearings, he brought in वो दो और चीजें ले आया. He said, when asked about Taiwan, he said, our policy remains unchanged, which is strategic ambiguity, that we may come, we may not come to your help. But if Taiwan increases its defense expenditure to 10% of GDP, we will. Our President Lai just last week has increased it to 3% and said 10% is impossible. हम कर ही नहीं सकते. So they have increased it to 3, but Colby's condition is 10 in the congressional hearing on record. Now, whether it has a backing of Trump, I don't know. Japan, Korea को बोला है that your treaty allies, we will come to your rescue. Publicly बोला है, please increase your defense expenditure. I am told privately, both have been told very curtly. Prime Minister of Japan, when he was in USA recently, as also the President of South Korea, that increase your defense expenditure by 1 to 1.5%. So it seems the American defense line with Taiwan is ambiguous. It may have shifted behind Taiwan and is now in the line of Japan and South Korea. This is what it seems to be. If you see the American policy after Vietnam, they were very clear that we will no longer be directly interventionist, but we will be an external balancer. So I think the message they are giving to Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea is that we will stand by you. We will do everything to invest in deterrence. So they are doing that. Some green berets have been deployed to the outlying islands. US naval SEAL teams have been deployed to, I think, Kinmen. There are also some reports of exercises being carried out to remove TSMC assets, engineers, and some other critical assets should a contingency arise. So now under Trump, the military preparations of deterrence have increased. In Trump 1.0, sir, in a conversation with his then National Security Advisor, John Bolton, about Taiwan and China, Trump very interestingly picked up a pen lying on his desk and said, John, in the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan is a pen. China is the resolute desk. Taiwan pen, China resolute desk. Now, this is typical Trump thinking. So what he was telling John Bolton is that is it worth fighting for Taiwan? Treasure, yes. Arms, supplies, but blood for Taiwan, 1,000 miles away. So, in sum, I would say Trump's position is deterrence, yes. Itna deterrence karo, complicate Xi's mind and force him to revisit his 2027 deadline and postpone it to a more auspicious date later. If that doesn't happen, the stated position is strategic ambiguity. We are not saying yes, we are not saying no. If you spend on defense and if the political circumstances of that time are more propitious, we may come to your help. The third one is most worrisome. That Trump, as part of a larger détente with China, with this pen resolute desk analogy, does a deal with China and says, all right, for some reason, Taiwan is yours. We will not fight over Taiwan. So all three possibilities are there. The first two are the publicly stated positions. The third is conjecture, and this is just conjecture from that conversation with John Bolton. And this is also what is in the corridors in US. Ki bhai, he will not fight over Taiwan. Baki sab kuch karne ko tayar. And if the deterrence is strong enough, it can play two ways. One is that Xi at the moment sees that they definitely have a military advantage over USA in the first island chain. I'm not saying everywhere else. Just in the first island chain because of their rocket force, their strategic support force, their space capacities, and so on and so forth. So will that cause Xi to take a military gamble? And the other is that when USA gives so much to Taiwan, steps up its defenses, it has also, sir, today it has about 140,000 troops in the first island chain. From Guam, Hawaii, all the, see what they are doing. A lot of military stuff is being done. So all this might trigger a Beijing attack. So all kinds of possibilities, but this is how I read Taiwan. Now, what is linked with Tehran, sir, is that if Trump does what he does and the US gets sucked into the Middle East or West Asia in a wider conflict, then they may not have either the bandwidth or the resources to do Taiwan simultaneously. Now, that is very worrying because it does seem what he has done in Tehran is in the first week of March, he delivered this letter to Khamenei through, I think, some Qatari
Qatari chap, yeah,
emissaries. And though the letter is not public, but now it is coming out here and there through even his social truth. He has a platform, Truth Social.
Yeah. I'm also member on it, huh? Incidentally, I'm also member.
So he's told him, sir, very categorically, ki, dekho, please see reason and roll back your nuclear program. Nobody will accept a nuclear Iran. And there he's right. I mean, right in a very qualified manner. The general understanding is that because North Korea has got nuclear weapons, look at its outsized influence in the Korean Peninsula. So in West Asia, can you afford a nuclear Iran? Saudi Arabia will not accept it. Israel will not accept it. Egypt will not accept it. So it's just not the Americans. And the other issue he's told him is, ki bhai, now about the nuclear program, at least my understanding is very clear, that weaponization is no longer a challenge. They already have enough weaponized uranium for 5 to 6 bombs. The only challenge is to convert it into a nuclear warhead and mount it on delivery mechanisms. That, I'm told, in a crude manner can be done in 2 to 3 months. A better, more sophisticated delivery device will take about 7 to 8 months. So the breakout time is 7 to 8 months. So Trump has told Iran that please, either you dismantle the nuclear program on your own peacefully, or we will dismantle it for you militarily. And what is worrying is that he's given a deadline of 2 months, which I'm told expires in the first week of May. And all that buildup is taking place. Many people say the buildup is as big as that took place for the Iraq war. So F-16s, F-35s, the B-2 stealth bombers in Diego Garcia, not 2 but 3 aircraft carriers, beefing up of American shipping, additional AD systems being moved to Diego Garcia, Israel, and other places. So a big military buildup is taking place. Also, sir, it must be considered that 2 things have happened. What Iran's policy was that we will create these ring of proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, so on and so forth. So if you attack the mainland, these 150,000 missiles will come from the Hezbollah. That was their whole deterrence. Israel, with those pagers and the walkie-talkies, they have reduced the 150,000 missiles to 10,000. That threat is no longer there. And 2, the whole brain behind this proxy strategy, Soleimani, उसको तो ट्रंप ने 1.0 में निकाल दिया. सीरिया में जो हुआ है, उससे now the air corridor is cleared. And now from most sources, we are told that on 26th October, out of the 4 S-300 systems that Iran had, 3 were destroyed, 2 to 3, severely damaged. So Iran is naked from the air defense point of view. So many hawks are arguing this is the time, do a joint Israeli-US strike and take out their capacities in those 3 places, Parchin, Natanz, and Fordo. Natanz and Fordo have enrichment and Parchin has weaponization. And roll back the nuclear program by 3 to 4 years or perhaps maybe more. In reaction of, obviously, Iran has threatened that you have got 50,000 troops here, bases, Saudi oil refineries, so on and so forth. We will fire at them. But my own understanding is that Iran knows that it is weak. Its air defense is very weak, and this will be an integrated air campaign, not only to target the nuclear devices, also perhaps to take out the leadership, so members of the Guardian Council, top generals, so on and so forth. So
they can even take out their oil assets.
So I think these 2 months, very strong back channel negotiations are on, and I think some kind of deal will be reached because Trump has told them, I'm told, that if you roll back your nuclear program, we will integrate you fully into the economic system. So sanctions, if they are lifted in that measure or even 50%, then life will be breathed into the Iranian economy, which is really in dire straits. I'm told, sir, when the revolution started, 1 rial used to equal $70. Today, 1 rial is equal to $1 billion. Inflation, they are in a mess. Power cuts, this, that. So this is my reading of Taiwan and Tehran, their linkages and what perhaps is the American plan. Any questions and also we can take it on.
No, okay, no, let's talk of the third T and then we'll talk.
Yeah, T, sir, the third T, tariffs. I'm no economist, but some of the shows and all that I've been watching, the sum and substance of it is this, that it is just not this, not just a few dollars here and there. What Trump is saying, that we will remake the whole supply chain matrix. His principal grouse is against allies like Europe, whom he says, you were in this wonderful space. You took energy from Russia, you exported your goods to China and took security from us. He gives one incidence that when we wanted to strike Gaddafi in Libya, you said you will not strike Gaddafi. You didn't even allow us to fly over your airspace. What NATO allies? We had to go around England. And you want defense protection for us. So therefore, his team is really very tough on the Europeans, and they call them off the cuff pathetic dependencies. In fact, in that leaked chat, sir, signal
Yeah.
chat. Vance is tough on Europe. The good news for India is that they are a little respectful of India. They call India an autonomous strategic partner, one that has stood up to China on its own. तो यूरोप से वो बड़े नाराज हैं. So basically their grouse is of this tariffs from elites. And what they say that in their 200 years of history, I'm told 103 years or so, America had no taxes, no income tax. What Mr. Swami has been talking in our context. They got all their revenues from tariffs. And then he says the American elite went and submitted to their system where they said, okay, low cost labor is the only thing that matters. Manufacturing was taken out. The elites benefited, but the poor farmer in Wisconsin and other places, they are suffering. They say the suicide rates in the US are the highest, which is very troublesome for a first world economy. So they are saying simply raise the tariffs as revenue, get manufacturing back, end the Rust Belt. We need those jobs. We need everything that produces jobs. And now the larger argument, drill, baby, drill, that climate change is a hoax created to take our manufacturing out. So they want to get manufacturing back, get the jobs back. Their ultimate aim is to abolish the internal revenue service, no income tax, and get it from here and reshape the whole supply chain matrix. So this clever one of energy from Russia, export there. They want energy from America to get exported, manufacturing from America to get exported. Now, obviously, there are two views on it. One view says that, no, this is absolute nonsense and Trump will destroy the world order. But from a very narrow American viewpoint, it makes a lot of sense to them because they are saying that all these policies were created by Wall Street, by the elite. Hillary Clinton, crooked Hillary Clinton, stupid Biden. So that is their internal debate. And internally, it makes sense from the American point of view. And of course, this whole tariff thing will also, we've not analyzed in detail, will have grave national security implications because of the supply chain flows and all that. So I think, at the end of it, all I would say is that if Trump is a reality, now this point, sir, is Trump a 2-year phenomena till the midterm elections kick in and all? Or is Trumpism deeper? If Trumpism is deeper, which means that all this will pass on to perhaps J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio as succeeding presidents, then we have to readjust to it strategically. So, and if I may just add one thing, sir, now that India is into this whole game, we are looking at an agreement. I've been trying to make one pitch that we have to be honest. Many of our policies also are too protectionist. I can understand protecting poor farmers. Why does the Bombay Club need protection? It has to play the free market. And in this whole give and take with President Trump, the grand bargain can be that we'll make some compromises on tariffs, give you market access, buy some arms. All we need is some deep technologies, because those deep technologies will come from nowhere. That is the grand bargain. If he's transactional, our transactional pitch should be there. कि यार बाकी सब हम कर रहे हैं आपके साथ, please हमको deep technologies.
Yeah, I am completely with you. I am completely with whatever you have said. In fact, I've been reading after all, Trump ka tehelka is today tariffs. And so everyone is reading about tariffs from whatever, kind of viewpoint you get.
He's also sorted out our very fuzzy economics.
Yeah, I agree with you. But, I've been reading with Chinese analogy. I won't say the Chinese analysis of what Trump has done. Again, you find two streams in that. There's one stream, which is the majority stream, the voluble stream within China and Chinese media in Mandarin, who say, oh, this is the best thing which has happened. Trump has handed over global leadership to us. But that's a shrill talk. Of late, for the past 3-4 days, there are guys who are talking and who are talking different language altogether. And today I came across a very interesting article which says, "Is Trump a madman?" Very great analysis. I mean, that's a rhetorical question. He says Trump is not mad.
Very,
Whatever he's doing is
very briefly, sir, very briefly. In Economist, there's an article today. Is Trump going to make China great again? In The Economist. So he
no,
says the policy will make China great again.
no, but that's the economist view because look, that's looking at it from an economic viewpoint. Okay,
Yeah.
but when you look, I mean, you read this fellow who is analyst of a think tank in Hong Kong. The He's the director of that this thing. He says whatever Trump is he's doing it with a great plan. He is reordering the complete world, and his focus is China.
That was my fundamental premise. When I started off, I said
Yeah,
this.
I have no doubt in my mind that okay, he is very clear about it. So, and he says one of the main things in this whole story is he is going to put his Monroe Doctrine together, which he is already putting, and then he is going to jettison Europe, which is already done virtually. He'll get hold over the Middle East, which he's already got actually. He might sort out Iran. Iran for them is not a great issue. I mean, this is a Chinese viewpoint I'm giving you. Yes, he will use India. Yes, India, if you see in this whole thing, is the only country which he says, he will develop great links with India. And then he will focus on China. So, from that point of view, you see that the Chinese have started worrying seriously about Trump. He says this globalization will go completely, and there'll be a reordering of the international affairs, which worries them tremendously. The second thing, since we are talking of the Indo-Pacific, while all of us are talking of Indo-Pacific, when you say Indo-Pacific, our focus normally goes on to Taiwan and China attacking Taiwan and all that. I've read a lot of articles in the recent past, and you combine it with the straight sword exercise which they've done, which is probably 2025A. That's the first one. You realize that China itself is not confident of forceful reunification of Taiwan. In fact, virtually in many quarters, it's given up. Recently, in one of their journals, Xi Jinping, of all people, got a article inserted. The article was about historically, so the Qing or the Ming or whichever empire, whenever it went to war, it collapsed. And so people have interpreted it as saying, look, Xi Jinping doesn't want to go to war to Taiwan. This is a new development completely. And the new theory which is coming out of out of China, is that they want to carry out a slow strangulation of Taiwan, in which Taiwan will be, slowly denuded. They might not go for the kill, but all these exercises will start off. They'll start off lawfare, cable cutting, like you said, and all that. Increased isolation. They want to do everything short of a blockade, so that and then declare sovereignty of that area. The moment you declare sovereignty over the Taiwan Sea, it's yours. The lawfare is, look, Taiwan is one China, right? So all this is happening. There's a contra thing which is coming out of China, and Trump has a different kind of view. And they're not very confident of this G2 business, though some guys do say G2 and all that. So in that context, how do you see the Indo-Pacific theater, going ahead? That's the major thing, because a lot of that will depend. Right now, when you say Indo-Pacific, there are two factors: the Pacific factor and the Indo factor. And if Iran has to go up, the Indo factor will blow up. After all, Iran is in Indian Ocean. And in this context, what role do you think we will play? Because either end of Indo-Pacific, Iran, whether it's Iran or Red Sea or all this, and that side, both are in flames. So how do you see this whole business unrolling? Sorry, I've taken a lot of time.
No, no, absolutely, sir. But you hit the nail on the head. These are very good questions, difficult to answer. But I hope our strategic establishment is looking at these, because these are the actual questions to be answered. So the way I look at it is, with regard to Iran, he's hoping that this maximum pressure campaign will force them to roll back their program peacefully. So therefore, that made deadline. And if I'm sitting in Iran, and if I'm also, US is reaching out to us, me simultaneously, and I also see the worries of the military pressures. They are real, sir. And I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
my
no,
hope.
yeah, yeah.
At least prudence will tell me कि अभी के लिए तो सुलह कर लो US. It makes no sense for Iran to invite those B-2 bombers and all. They'll create havoc in everywhere. And the fact that he's moved them, he's moving other stuff, he means business. And if it is not Iran, at least the Houthis will be silenced. But the other
No,
thing
no,
is, by
no,
10
no,
साल से
when you said Houthis, let me hear he's giving a demonstration of what will happen to Iran on Houthis.
yes, could be
वो
similarly.
हूती का हो या ना हो, उसको तो ठोक रहा है. Now he is telling Iran कि भाई तेरा भी हाल ये होगा.
And see, sir, why he makes sense to me in one more fashion. He's telling the American military that you are bloody bloated. And I don't want to hear any of this bloody woke nonsense now. What I want from you is mission readiness, restoration of the warrior ethos, and lethality. Don't give me briefing sitting in Pentagon. Tell me what you'll do in Iran. This is good stuff, sir. The military will get smartened. So, now with regard to Taiwan, now that is a critical question. I agree with you, sir, what Zeev is trying to do. In my view, he's trying to engineer the Cuban Missile Crisis in reverse. So he will do the blockading and now tell America that, Pan, you have to travel 1,000 miles. You have the problem. I'm here waiting for you. Do you wish to escalate? Now, if America has to break the blockade or versions of it, look at the American view now. If you have to escalate, then the questions will be asked 1,000 miles away. Is it worth it? Is it in our existential threat? Should we shed American blood? Forever wars? Is it worth fighting for China, against China? The other things are also there, sir. The consequences of US giving Taiwan without a fight are great. They will look at the kind of businesses. All these big tech companies are linked to chips. All the chips come from Taiwan. So stock market crash, business collapse, maritime shipping. What will the allies think of USA? What will Japan and South Korea think? It could be the end of Trump presidency, end of MAGA. So both ways, there are very difficult choices to be made, and that's why strategic ambiguity. That is a very, I think, a sophisticated American response. कि भाई आप करो, defense बढ़ाओ. अगर उस time circumstance ऐसा हुआ that we think that Taiwan itself will give a good fight, Japan and South Korea are willing to join, then we may help. But it is left to a decision of that time. So this is the Cuban Missile Crisis, and like that time, sir, I don't know who blinked. I think it was Khrushchev who blinked, because he had to come from a long distance. Now, if USA has to travel this long distance, will he fight? Will he blink, or will he fold? Nobody can answer this question. I mean, this is something in X's mind, but the fact is that I agree with you. His first preference, X's first preference, obviously, is to do all this and tell the Americans, see reason. I'm told very discreetly, already told Biden this in 2023 when they met in California. He was reasoning with him that, see, we are not the USSR. Look at our military power, economic power. Please retreat to your corner of the Pacific. Now, whether Americans do it or not is, there are other questions. There seems to be a divide between Trump and his national security team. Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, Elbridge Colby are China hawks. Trump is more of a business transactional. He's willing to power, but not for these endless wars. So this is it. As far as India is concerned, I think now my own view is, given the power differential, militarily, scientifically, technologically, in our own mind, we have to come to one conclusion, that along the LAC, I will build fail-proof deterrence, and it can be done. Fail-proof deterrence. I will contest you very actively. But in the larger strategic relationship, I think it is time for detente. Detente not meaning peace, but peace to buy time. The gap is so much that we have to say that, all right, a larger war conflict doesn't make sense. That seems to be the spirit of Prime Minister Modi's interview with Lex Friedman. He gave a podcast. And now is the time when even the Chinese are reaching out to us. What does that say? Elephant, dragon dance.
What's up here?
So we should not be naive. I'm not saying that, no, the threat from China is gone. Fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, but in the larger context, do detente and build your capacities. Our problem is that if we say detente, we will stop building our capacities. We have to build our capacities in all these domains that we've been talking of. Stealth-enabled defensive air power, drones, AD. We have to build our capacities. And for building our capacities, we need those deep technologies from USA. And we also need these deep technologies because we need them to push our economic productivity, as also for deterrence with China. And my argument is deterrence, not war fighting. So fail-proof deterrence along the LAC, detente in long term, in a longer frame. Use this time to build your deterrence. And if you have deterrence, then China and India can grow in peace. If we don't have deterrence, then we may invite some kind of aggression from China.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Useful to us, but we must not become a pawn of the Americans, which we will not. We are not foolish.
I agree with you with the fact that we need to build up our deterrence and not become a pawn of the Americans. There's no doubt about it. We need to have deterrence so that we can enforce peace. Right? Yes. Whether China develops or not is a different story, because I have completely different views. It's not developing, it's contracting. And we need to develop. In fact, the way I look at it, there's a great period of opportunity where China itself is going through internal convulsions. And America willy-nilly is giving you a strategic opportunity. In fact, it needs you to become great again. So this is a great opportunity for us, right? And I feel, there's a third thing.
If I can just add one line.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So you are right. America as a hegemon is challenged. China continued rise is doubtful, because many of you, General Nara, and so many others are saying that its economy is in trouble, demographics is in trouble, and therefore is the great opportunity for India.
Yeah.
And we must make use of both. The USA to get their deep technologies, to deter China, and not be a pawn, but be a useful balancer. A useful balancer. And therefore, I also am reiterating the same thing, though I have a little different view on China. But what I am reiterating for India is that don't miss this opportunity. It will be such a tragedy if we miss this opportunity.
Yeah, I go with you 100%. The second proposition which I have, which I'd like you to give your views on, is, look, I'm drawing it from what you said. Well, in the Pacific, America and Trump can do what they want. But in the Indian Ocean, America doesn't have the capability which India has for many reasons, right? So if that is the case, and there's a problem areas in Iran, Syria still remains a problem. Houthis, all these fellows are still hanging around. Is there a case for us to step up our diplomacy and act as a diplomatic stabilizer in West Asia, and especially with reference to Iran? And if so, how do we do that?
we must step up our diplomacy, and not only the civil diplomacy, military diplomacy.
Military diplomacy. I'm talking of all. I mean, let me put it. Let the answer question is. It's not a matter of just the prime minister and the external affairs minister going making some statements, bombastic statements and coming back, or sharp statements and coming back. I think you need to put. I won't say boots on ground. You need to put diplomacy on ground through ground level. That is what is important. I would like you to outline that and give your view on that.
So I'm saying, as far as diplomacy is concerned, we are punching far below our weight. The foreign service needs to expand, and our DAs and all need to expand. So in many critical countries in Africa, this business of one DA for 5 countries, what message are you sending?
Yeah, that's
And
useless.
each of these DAs and other people can do a lot of good stuff on diplomacy. I've been arguing for very long that theater commanders also will be quasi-diplomats. The Eastern Theater Commander will be taking, LAC will be the least of his concerns. That's left to the other commanders. He has to look at Bangladesh, Myanmar, make sure that those threats don't come here. And there are 100 ways of doing it, many things you can't speak on television.
Yeah,
But
naturally.
the military to military relationship is of great use to complement the to civil diplomacy. And when I talk of deterrence, this is one of the great tools. If you step up military diplomacy and the other issues, sir, now we are in the big league. We have to step up investments in space, intelligence, our DIA. The DIA's role should be equivalent to the defense DIA of USA, which means he looks at regions beyond and not just does not keep doing intelligence in J&K. It has to go. So this is what I mean, this business of projecting power, of looking beyond your borders, is somehow not in our culture. This must come with the theater commanders. In fact, if you see the CDS, 40% of his role should be diplomacy.
Yeah.
And he should complement the other levers of power. So massive investments in diplomacy. Now you're talking of West Asia. Absolutely. I mean, I went to this Raisina, Middle East a couple of months back, where there was this talk of an Arabian Sea order, where India can be a great stabilizer. And what is also, sir, there in West Asia, you see, one of course is these problems of Palestine, Iran and all. There is another modernizing strategic discourse which you get from Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, who are talking of things like non-oil growth, distancing themselves from Islamic fundamentalism, alternate maritime corridors. Our biggest problem in West Asia, sir, is China and Turkey. China is a global player and Turkey is a very big regional influence. So we have to do stuff, create our capacities, MBA, naval, air. So both our Navy and the air should be able to exercise combat influence from the Gulf of Aden all the way across Malacca. And this is not offensive. This is just having capacities to be used when the need so arises. So refueler aircrafts, ranges of our aircraft. Andaman Nicobar Islands, Andaman Nicobar Command was set up to project power across Malacca. Of late, all we've been doing is defending every inch of the many islands there. So this cultural change is required. And this itself will beef up deterrence greatly.
Yeah, I think so. Is there anything else you want to say, or should we take a few questions? Because I think we have a lot of questions.
Thought came to my mind, sir. Now that this Five Eyes intelligence network, which Trump now doesn't seem to be very fond of because he's upset with most of those players, it's time India plugs into these kind of networks, or at least makes a bid to, plug into these kind. Look at, sir. Okay, let me make one last point before I go. Look at shipbuildings. We know what the Chinese are. Their capacities in shipbuilding, 400 ships versus 295. That business of shipbuilding capacity. Trump has brought shipbuilding under the White House. and has named a naval officer just to head shipbuilding in the civil domain. We need to do something similar. In fact, there's an article by Sanjeev Sanyal where he's suggesting that the Quad should get together and step up shipbuilding. Shipbuilding by itself is not offensive, but those shipbuilding capacities is what we need. Because what you said about the Indo-Pacific, Chinese power in the Pacific is going to come to the IOR. And in terms of shipbuilding capacities, in fact, in the IOR, we need an A2AD. An A2AD to say that anybody who steps into these general regions, they'll be constantly monitored. Monitored in terms of MDA, we will have capacities to respond. So I think the next 10 years, I mean, even as an army man, I will say that what needs the most resourcing is the Navy or the maritime dimension.
I go with you 100%. Now that you mentioned it, we'll spend a couple of minutes more of the Quad. The Quad summit is going to come up now, later this year. Do you think we need to have a new policy for Quad and start thinking of the military aspects of Quad than the other socio-economic aspects?
Yes.
Let me outline this a little, because then you could see. For example, you spoke of the Navy and the Quad Navy. I wouldn't say Quad Navy, naval capability, naval capacity. You see, we have a lot of shipbuilding yards. Is there a case for us to pitch, if not shipbuilding, ship refit and repair, which is huge? Because, if suppose the American ship refit and repair, or for that matter, the Japanese or the Australian comes to India, it frees up their capacities to enhance their navies. You don't have to build. Even refitting is a big task, right? To that extent, I know the L&T shipyard in Katupalli has carried out refitment of a couple of American ships. So is there I'm now not talking in air, I'm talking of something grounded in reality. Is there a case for us to pitch in for that? The second case, MRO for air vehicles. Completely, do all aircraft have to go across oceans and get refitted in England or France or USA and all that? Why can't they be done here? Well, that's the kind of technology you need. I mean, it might be second grade technology, but it'll lead you to the first grade technology. I mean, these are, I think, acceptable technologies which they'll part with, because then their own aircraft, their own ships will get maintained with least thing, and your own capacities will go up, right? And the third thing is intelligence, like you rightly said. So is there a case for all this? Do you see that Quad should step up to the plate for this?
Absolutely, sir. And what should be the guiding beacon? Let me make one assertion, sir, that the single reason China is beating all democracies, including USA and India, is civil military fusion. Because they don't have any of these discussions. Distinction, civil military. In our case, the very fact that arises that should Quad have a military dimension creates the problem. So I'll make a few points in that context.
Yeah, please.
Just look at CRIC, sir. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. It's no alliance. It is all these high-sounding cliches of higher than the mountains and what's sweeter than honey and all that. But when Russia was in trouble, all of them bailed them out. China gave chips, CNC equipment, Iran gave Shahzad drones, North Korea gave troops and artillery munition. So when push comes to shove, even a military power which spends about 10% of its GDP on defense could not do things on its own. That is the reality. Now, Quad did start off with some kind of military tenor. Then when the Chinese protested, we kind of backed off and started saying vaccines and all that. I'm saying that Quad must be repurposed as a platform for national security in terms of public good. So if national security is a tool of public good, not necessarily of offense, but defense, supply chains, capacities, civil and military. And of course, their predominant use will be civil. But if push comes to shove,
Yeah, you
military.
can change.
What is the harm in it? Just like China does. When
Yeah.
they roll out their bases all over the world, they don't call them civil base. It's a civil base, but they have those parameters built in to dock a military ship. So just as they are doing it, Quad as a force of national security for public good in this civil military fused endeavor. If we pool capacities, India, Japan, Australia, and the US, supply chains, technologies, things like shipbuilding, chip making, it is not offensive against anyone. And it is certainly not NATO. We are strengthening this partnership just as China is part of many other partnerships. But in order to radiate to China that we have, no such intentions, we are punching below our weight in Quad. So Quad must be repurposed in this manner as national security as a force for public good. In fact, today, sir, there is no economic prosperity without national security. So the two are linked. So why should we be coy and shy about Quad? It has a very important civil and technological dimension, but the military dimension should be fused into it. It makes eminent sense by way of economies. I mean, when four countries come together, there will be economies, then there'll be economies of scale, there'll be business opportunities, and by the way, there will also be deterrence. What is the harm?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think we've had a terrific conversation on Trump in the Indo-Pacific. Things are nebulous, but when you do a analysis, uh, a regressive analysis, things are not so nebulous as they seem, right? And like you rightly said in the beginning, there is a method in the madness which Trump is exhibiting. And we need to be alive to that. And let's not keep screaming as to what the Western thought process is or the Chinese thought process is. We need to develop our own thought process. I think on that, you outlined those thought processes in terms of military diplomacy, capacity building, providing, building deterrence for deterrent, all that, and many more.